Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 348. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today I'm talking about taking things personally, which is something that I used to have a problem with. And I don't know at what point things got better, but I've noticed it's just not a problem that I have anymore. But I was online the other day, I forget where I was or what forums I was in, and saw a couple of posts from different people about different things. And it seemed that what they were experiencing was that they were having problems taking things personally. And that made me kind of stop and think about where I am in my life in terms of that and how I used to do that a lot and how it's gotten a lot better. So, I think this is a pretty common problem. So I thought it was worth doing a podcast episode about. So what are you going to learn? I'm going to talk about what does it mean to take things personally, why this is a problem, and then how to stop taking things personally and how to react instead, and how to use these situations also as a way to evaluate relationships and what kinds of mindset shifts can help you in this process. So before we get into today's episode, I wanted to mention, got an email from a listener a couple days ago, which I really, really liked. So if you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, Episode 345 was about why we could all benefit from saying yes more often. So this person wrote in, this is someone that I've, engaged several emails with over the past few years. So I kind of know this person a bit. And he sent in an email with 12 things that he had said yes to, some of which have led already to other opportunities. He also included some things that he said no to without regret, things that he said no to with regret, and what he learned from the situation. So I found this really interesting, and I always love it when people write in and tell me their reflections on podcast episodes and things that they've learned from the episodes. And I think it was really interesting to see the reflection on what this person chose to say yes to and what this person chose to say no to. And I really think that reflecting on our decisions to say yes or no to opportunities can really help us make better decisions in the future. So if you haven't listened to that episode, it's 345. And if you have listened to it and have reflected on your custom of saying yes or no and why, I would love to hear from you. So you can always email me at holly@hollyworton.com. So let's get into today's episode. So, what does it mean to take things personally? What it means is when we get upset by things that other people say or do because we take their remarks or their behavior as being directed at us in particular, either because we've done something wrong or these people don't like us. We use other people's behavior to mean a whole bunch of things which may or may not be true. So when we're in a situation like this, one of the best things to do, especially if it's not a live in-person face-to-face situation, but rather kind of the person's not there personally. Like maybe you've received an email or haven't received an email or haven't received a reply to something. Stop and examine your beliefs and look at why do you have the tendency to take things personally? Why are you feeling bad by this interaction or lack of interaction? What fears, blocks, or limiting beliefs were triggered by this interaction or lack of? And what are your assumptions about the situation? For example, if you go around assuming that everyone is out to get you, then that's the lens that you're going to see the world through. So what are your assumptions about this and about other situations where you've taken people's reactions or behavior personally? So a few weeks ago in episode 346, I did an episode on what to do when your friendship is over and what it's like when friendships kind of downgrade into acquaintanceships and when they're lost entirely. And I had mentioned a good friend of mine whom I hadn't been in touch with for about a year and occasionally get kind of social media comments and had reached out to the person to say, let's meet up and talk, and it never happened. And then the day that I did that recording of the podcast, this friend had sent me a message saying, let me send you a link to my calendar and we'll book in a time and we'll chat. And I said, that's great. And it never happened. And I remember saying in this episode that, that was probably the last time I was going to reach out to this person because I don't know what's going on for them. I think it's been a combination of things. Like, I think she's been really busy, but I think also there's been personal family stuff, possibly. I don't know what's going on, but the reality is it's been almost a year since we actually talked, and I've reached out a couple of times and it's just never happened. So clearly either the person doesn't have the time or it's not a priority. So this is the kind of thing that in the past I would have taken personally. This is the kind of thing I would have felt like, oh, well, I don't mean enough to them. Clearly this relationship isn't important enough to them. But again, I don't know. I don't know what's going on because it's been almost a year since we spoke. So I don't know what's going on. So let's examine my beliefs here. If I were to take this personally, why would I have taken this personally? Because, maybe I would feel like she doesn't value our relationship. She doesn't value our friendship. She's just not interested anymore. It might trigger my fears. Her business, I think, has been doing really, really well. And I think she's really kind of stepped up. So that might trigger my limiting belief of I'm not good enough because maybe she thinks I'm not at her level. And this is something that I've seen in the past with other kind of business friends. Their business grows and I assume that they think that they're at a different level, and so they let go of the friendship for that reason. Again, assumption. So what are your assumptions? These are all these things that could be going through my head, but the reality is I don't know what's going on. So how to react in these situations? Try to see things from the other person's perspective because you don't know what's going on for them now. Other people are going through their own stuff. So like I said, I think there might have been some family health issues. I think she's been super busy with business. I think things are she's grown to new levels and doesn't have time. When I try to see things from her perspective, that's what I'm seeing. But again, I don't know. So don't jump to conclusions. Don't be quick to judge. Don't be quick to assume that, because this person's business has grown, they don't want to be friends with me anymore. That could be it, or it could not be it. So, don't give in to a knee-jerk reaction. And this is especially when you're face-to-face with someone, but also when you get a message from someone that triggers you. Don't assume. Get more information. Communication can often be the key to resolving these situations. So in this particular situation, I kind of feel like, I've reached out a couple times and it hasn't happened. So yeah, I could write a long, heartfelt message saying, oh, I really miss you. I'm really sorry we don't speak anymore. I really wish we could communicate. But I kind of feel like I've expressed interest in staying in touch and it hasn't happened. But for example, I was kind of making a list of things that I might have taken personally in the past. So I recently released the second edition of my book, Business Beliefs, and I've been reaching out to people that I know enjoyed the book in the past and the first edition of the book, and I've been reaching out to them saying, do you want a free review copy so that you can review the book? And I wanted to reach out to someone that I know had found the book useful in the past, and I went to text. And I saw that the last time I texted her was last year for her birthday, and I said happy birthday and never got a response. But I also saw that this person had liked my post about the book being launched, the second edition of the book. So I thought, okay, well, this person's still kind of paying attention to my things and being friendly. So, I don't take personally the fact that she never responded to my birthday text, because we all get inundated with Facebook messages and texts and things on our birthdays, and it can be kind of overwhelming to respond. I tend to use birthday messages as a way to rekindle contact with people sometimes, but I'm also aware that like when I get hundreds of Facebook posts on my wall saying happy birthday, like I'm not going to respond to them all. I used to years ago, but I don't now. So different people have different kind of customs in terms of responding to texts like that or messages like that. So I'm not going to take it personally. And I sent her a Facebook message to see if she wanted a review copy of the book. And I also sent a message to say, like, let's meet up, because it's been ages since we actually saw each other in person. So again, that was my not taking it personally, reaching out via a different place to see if maybe she would be more responsive there. And if I don't hear from her, then, I'll let it go for a while and maybe reach out again in a few months. So for me, I think the things that used to really trigger my taking things personally is people not responding to me. So not responding to texts, not responding to emails, not responding to messages, that kind of thing, I think would trigger my insecurities and taking things personally. But the reality is, again, we don't know what's going on for other people. Other people are going through their own stuff. They're busy. Sometimes they read messages and then don't respond in the moment and forget. So many times I've received messages from people, it's, like a month after I've messaged them saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought I responded to this. I didn't. I just realized I didn't. That happens to me. I mean, Instagram messages, I don't really pay attention to. So every once in a while I'll go in there and I'll see like months old messages from people that I just didn't see because for some reason I don't notice when I get the little notification for Instagram messages. So yeah, different people, don't take it personally because you never know what's going on for people. So don't jump to conclusions. Don't be quick to judge. Get more information. If this is an important relationship to you, reach out and get in touch again. But again, if you find that you're always the one reaching out and you never hear from them, then, maybe it's time to just let it go and just let things fizzle out, which is something that I talked about a lot in that podcast episode about friendships. And then learn, what can you learn from this situation? What might you do differently next time? So that can be, maybe reaching out to them on a different platform or on a different medium. See if that generates a response. As always, evaluate the relationship. Does this person regularly make you feel bad? So instead of the situation being about, someone not reaching out or not being in touch, maybe someone snapped at you. Or maybe someone yelled at you, or maybe someone criticized you. Evaluate the relationship. Does this person regularly make you feel bad? Are they just going through a one-time thing? Or is this an ongoing thing? And if it's ongoing, maybe they're going through an extended bad time, or maybe they're just being disrespectful. Maybe they're just a toxic person. Maybe they're just someone that you don't want to be around. So, look at it. Is it you? Are you being overly sensitive? Or is it them and they're going through a bad time? Really kind of stop and think about the situation again. Is it one time or is it ongoing? And if this is someone who regularly makes you feel bad and makes you feel insecure and makes you feel unhappy about yourself and leads you to take all the things that they say personally, maybe avoid them if needed. Go no contact with them if they're really toxic. But maybe it's time to let go of the relationship. So really evaluate what's going on, not just for you, but for how this person makes you feel. If you consistently come away from interactions with this person feeling bad about yourself, it's probably time to let go of the relationship and just let it fizzle out and move on. But I think one of the things that's really led me to not take things personally and be able to take things kind of more neutrally is the fact that I've really worked on my mindset over the last 7 years. And I've really improved my self-esteem, my self-confidence. And I'm at a much better place myself, so I'm much less likely to take things personally. And I think this is really important because when we take things personally, it really doesn't feel good. And oftentimes it's unnecessary. Oftentimes when we take things personally, it wasn't about us. It was about the other person and what was going on for them. I always remember this story that I think it's Stephen Covey tells in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He tells the story about how he's on the subway in New York City. I don't remember the details of this, but the essence is here. So he's on the subway and there's this father with his 2 kids and they're being really loud and they're just being obnoxious and they're really disrupting and he's getting really annoyed and he doesn't say anything, but he's just like, getting really irritated with the situation. And finally someone else speaks up and says something to the dad and is like, aren't you going to control your kids? And the guy was like, yeah, I'm really sorry. I just don't know what to do. We've just come from the hospital. Their mother's just died of cancer and she's been in the hospital for the last month. So I just don't know how to handle it. And that story really highlighted for me the fact that we never know what's going on for other people. Like we see the father sitting there not saying anything to the kids that are just being totally obnoxious because they can't handle what's just happened. They can't process it because they're too young. And we don't know what's going on for them. We don't know what has happened to cause this current situation. So we can take it personally and say, why is everyone out to get me? Why do I always get on the wrong train? Why are kids these days such brats? I mean, like we can make so many assumptions about the situation. This father doesn't care. He's just a deadbeat. I don't know. Like you can make up so many assumptions about the situation. But once you know the reality, it's probably not what you assumed. It's probably, the other party has so much more information than you have. So I think making assumptions about another person's behavior is really just not productive. It's not useful. It's damaging to your self-esteem and it's damaging to the relationship and your interactions with this other person because you don't have all the information. You don't know. So just running through it again, like get more information if you can. Because having clear communication can often be the key to resolving these situations and not taking it personally. Again, doing the mindset work to improve your personal power can be really, really helpful. So personal power, and I talk about this in my book, Business Beliefs, but one of my favorite definitions of personal power is in chapter 13 of If Trees Could Talk, my book that came out last year. A group of trees called the grandmothers gave me a really good definition of it. And I'm just looking through it. Here it is. So they say personal power is a feeling, like that feeling of treeness. Treeness in the sense of being like tall and grounded and rooted and just strong. And it is multi-layered. It is not something that most people will achieve overnight or after one simple visualization. It is made up of the layers of self-trust, self-love, self-acceptance, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-value, self-worth. And it is the sense that all of these things being deeply grounded and connected with all the multiple layers of your being, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your superconscious mind. It is your regular everyday self connected with your higher self or soul or whatever it is that you personally choose to call it. So think of that. Like if you do the mindset work to improve your self-esteem, your self-trust, your self-love, your self-acceptance, your self-confidence, your self-value, your self-worth, you're going to be in a strong place. You're going to be in a really grounded place. You're going to be in a place of personal power, where you're feeling strong and grounded and kind of more neutral in your interactions with other people. And when you feel strong, you're much less likely to take things personally. And I think that's a really important thing. So do the ongoing mindset work to improve your sense of personal power and self-esteem, and also evaluate the situations, the individual situations in which you take things personally. So maybe take the time to stop and go back and make a list of situations where you've taken things personally and look at what fears, blocks, and limiting beliefs were triggered by those interactions. Like, what are the kind of overarching themes that trigger your tendency to take things personally? What are the assumptions that you tend to make? What is the lens that you walk around seeing the world through that triggers your taking things personally? Really go through past memories and examine that and look at that, because that will help you become more aware of what triggers you in the future. And it will really help you to not take things personally in the future and see situations from a more neutral perspective. It's definitely possible. God, I used to take so many things personally, and I just don't anymore. And if I do, I don't ruminate on it. Like, it might trigger that, like, not good enough feeling. But then I tend to go into being more neutral and evaluating and just seeing the interaction, more from a more kind of neutral perspective. So I hope that helps. I think it is absolutely possible to stop taking things more personally. And I wanted to say, I think I first became aware of the fact that I used to take things personally years ago. It was, maybe 2007, 2008 or so, when I read this book called The 4 Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. And it's a book by Miguel Ruiz, which was, I really, really liked the book. So he talks about the 4 agreements. The first one being, be impeccable with your word. The second one being, don't take anything personally. The third one being, don't make assumptions. And the fourth, always do your best. So the second agreement, don't take anything personally, is obviously what I'm talking about here. And I just really think that when we let go of this habit of taking things personally, and we stop taking things personally, and we start taking things kind of more neutrally, it really leads to happiness and joy and just feeling good with ourselves and feeling good with the world and just being happier. Because when we take things personally, that's just our mind gremlins grabbing onto crap that, things that other people say that aren't necessarily even bad, but we use them to feel bad about ourselves. We use that curt email response or inexistent email response or text that people don't reply to feel bad about ourselves. That's just our limiting beliefs, our mind gremlins, using these interactions to make us feel bad or to make us feel worse about ourselves. So, in summary, totally possible to stop taking things personally. Look at your beliefs. Look at why you have the tendency to take things personally. What specific fears, blocks, and limiting beliefs were triggered by these interactions? What are your assumptions about people? What are your assumptions about the other person in the situation? Try to see things from the other person's perspective, because you don't know what's going on for them right now. Other people are going through their own stuff. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't give in to a knee-jerk reaction. Don't make assumptions. Learn from the situation. What can you learn from what happened? What might you do differently next time? And again, evaluate the relationship. Is this someone that you want in your life? Does this person regularly make you feel bad? And is that because you're always taking things personally, or are they legitimately being toxic or disrespectful or negative? And know that you can let go of relationships if they're not serving you, if they're not good for you, if they're toxic. And finally, work on your mindset. I will always say this probably, but just do what you can to improve your sense of personal power, because that will make you feel more grounded in everything that you do. So, that's all for today. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening, and remember to visit hollyworton.com/348 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.